question. Does the internet feel different these days? We'll come back to that. But for right now, to start off, I'm starting a YouTube channel. And, if you're here, welcome. My own artwork is going to be a big part of my YouTube presence. But any artist needs to have ideas, because art without ideas isn't really art. Some of the ideas that I'm going to be talking about include these things that inspire my artwork, and that's a range of topics. So that's things like nature, philosophy, spirituality, psychology, sociology, and history as well. Today, I want to talk about the structure of media systems and how they shape societal conversation. In other words, how does our media technology shape not just what we talk about, but what we become? Media technology becomes a sort of invisible force. We get so used to these structures, we can't see them. And by structures, I'm talking about the platforms, user interfaces, screens, and algorithms that frame modern life. So media and the structure of that media controls the social narrative, and it controls our information ecosystems. There's a deeper level to it too, things that even the engineers who design social media platforms don't understand, and that nobody can understand because it's happening in an organic way. It's the way that we interact with our screens, but also the way that our screens sort of control how we see the world. So think about your phone and your screen as like a window into this space where all these other people are. They're not physically there, but they're there in the form of information and consciousness, and they're thinking in that way. And it's like a space where all of our minds are sort of connected, more or less. And so every time you open that phone, or you open your screen and you look at your phone and open social media, you're connecting your mind with everyone else on that platform, and their energy is merging with yours. And whatever the vibe is, you're just taking that in. It's not easy to filter that out. And your brain doesn't know the difference between things that are happening in real life in front of you and people that exist in your own social circle that you know. Your brain doesn't know the difference between that and what you see on a screen. That could be people that you'll never meet in real life. And their social circles, have nothing to do with your life, but your brain thinks that they're part of your social circle. So to build on this idea, I want to talk about a saying by Marshall McLuhan. Some of you may have heard of this saying. It's, "The medium is the message." So what does that actually mean? McLuhan was a media philosopher, and back in the 1960s, he had this saying, "The medium is the message." So by the medium is the message, he's really saying that it's the structures of our media technologies that are actually shaping our information ecosystems more profoundly than the actual content. So the structure of media, the way that everything is designed, has more of an influence on society than the content we put into that. The basic idea is that the form and structure of media shape human perception more profoundly than the actual content of that media. And the easiest way to think about that is the social media algorithm. Everyone knows that the algorithm controls what's in your own feed, and it's trying to optimize for a lot of different things. Number one, it wants your attention. So it's trying to get you to spend as much of your time as possible on social media. But number two, it's also sometimes trying to market things to you. And that could be all kinds of things. It could be products, it could be ideologies. It's controlling who sees your posts. I mean, there's so much to all this stuff, and we don't know how this is being designed and who is controlling all this stuff, because there's not just one algorithm, there's a lot of different algorithms that are all interconnected. But, you know, looking back in history, we can kind of look at how different forms of media changed the way that people thought. So McLuhan talked about print media being a very linear form of thinking and communicating. You have your ideas, you know, it's written down in print, you read it from left to right, it's very logical, and you process it in that way. When a new medium enters society, it doesn't just change the speed of information, it changes the organization of our senses and social patterns. Television created a shift towards a much more passive style of communication. So rather than participating like you do when you're reading a book, you're actually, you know, thinking and reading the line out loud in your head. On television, it's just kind of going on in the background, and you might be paying attention, but you kind of go into a state of almost a trance where, you know, you're just spacing out watching TV. And a lot of people at that time started to notice what television was doing in that way, and people thought it was sort of dangerous. Fast forward today, like we talked about with social media. So we have the algorithm, and we have people who are addicted to their phones and, you know, screen time, and we're just always on our phone, and that's its own kind of trance-like state when you're doom scrolling and you're just reading through all this stuff, and you can't get out of it, and you're not enjoying yourself, and what is going on there? You know, it's like kind of turning people into zombies in a way. But also, the type of content that you're seeing is controlled by the structure of that media and the algorithm and what you've interacted with in the past, so that my feed is different from yours. And people are spending so much time on these platforms that the platforms are training how people think. So it is a little bit more interactive, social media, because technically you can put stuff out there, you know, like technically YouTube is social media. So I'm making a video right now and I'm putting my thoughts out there. The only problem with looking at it as an interactive form of media is that's not really how it works now. That's how social media used to work, you know, back, like I said, before COVID, when the internet felt a certain way. It felt like you were participating in it and you were part of a community and talking to people. But now something has changed, and people don't really post as much as they used to. And part of that is because when you post now, your friends don't even see your post half the time. You know, and that's because of the algorithm. It's trying to get you to consume content from these bigger accounts and from advertising, and it's trying to push content onto you rather than you following certain accounts and actively controlling what you want to see in your feed. It doesn't work that way anymore. And that's one of the saddest things I think about social media, especially platforms like Instagram and Facebook. They've become a much less participatory media form, and they're now something that's very passive, just like television, except it's a hyper, you know, worse form of television, because you're just scrolling and it's all short-term stuff, and it learns what you're interested in, and then the algorithm's just going to keep feeding you that. And, you know, TikTok is one of the big catalysts for that type of move, because TikTok pioneered the video and the short-term content, and then Instagram took that over and switched from a photo platform to videos, and then everything was about these viral videos rather than seeing your friends and interacting with your friends. And one of the big things about this is it creates us versus them narratives. So everyone can see that. It's trying to divide people into these different camps, and especially when it comes to politics, we're seeing that just in crazy amounts now. The other thing is this level of like performance that's going on, and you can call this performative belief signaling. So when you post something on Facebook, you're trying to perform in a certain way. You want to show I'm this type of person, and you're trying to tell yourself that, but you're also trying to tell the people who might see it who you are. And people really begin to self-brand. And what I mean by that is their entire identity becomes not a human being who is evolving and has these nuanced perspectives, but a static brand, where you want people to see this best side of you, and you're seeing yourself based on how you think other people view you. So instead of forming your identity through lived experience and self-reflection and personal relationships, your identity is a performance. It's fake. It's inauthentic. And then, this creates feedback loops because everybody's out there and they're performing, but you learn from the people around you. So you're then learning from people who are performing. You're creating these performances that are reflecting other performances. It's not reflecting real life. It's this very fake type of way of connecting with people. And then we get into screen addiction. So, this is all interconnected. I think everyone misses that feeling of community and that feeling of curating your own space. Because that's what it used to feel like. When you were on Facebook or Instagram, you curated the content you saw because you chose who you were going to follow. And now, the algorithm curates what you see based on what you've reacted with before in your feed. Not stuff that you follow. I mean, I think some people are saying it's like 50 or 60% of the things in your feed are not accounts that you follow. This is just stuff that Instagram is sending out to you. So you can't escape the influence of social media. It is what it is. And one of the big problems is even if you don't have social media, guess what? Everybody else has it. So, I know people who have given up social media, but they're still living in the world with everyone who has social media, and social media is influencing the world. So these type of behaviors, like I was talking about, the performance-like behaviors, self-branding, that type of stuff, that starts to creep into the real world, into how people interact with each other. And it changes the way that we see ourselves and how we see the world. But one thing that I've been doing that has helped a lot, I just call it empty space. What I've been doing with that is just making sure that every day I get some amount of time that's just silence. Because I get into such a habit with always having some sort of podcast on or listening to music or the news or something like that. There's just always something going on in the background. And I think a lot of us do that, and even like driving, like audiobooks, podcasts, things that you feel like you're being productive with it, like you're learning from it, but what you don't realize is the opportunity cost of missing out on that empty time, empty space, because it's the empty space where you actually allow your ideas to settle. You actually allow all the information that's gone into your mind and it's swirling around and all these different thoughts, you allow it to work itself out. So if I get a certain amount of silent time every day, I notice in that silent time, my thoughts are just going in the background. And after a certain amount of time, they just start to organize, and I start to see things more clearly. And even things that are difficult or that are bothering me or that I'm worried about, they start to organize and I see them in a logical way. It's like, all right, this is a problem, but then this is what you can do about it. And if you can't do anything about it, then there's no point in letting it bother you anymore. It's a very mindfulness type of approach to all this stuff. And you can get really focused with this. You can make your silent time a focused period of just sitting in meditation. I used to do that for a while. I did an hour of meditation every morning. I would set a timer and I would sit and close my eyes for an hour. And that was really helpful. It's tough to get time to do that. I think that's a little overkill for most people. But what you can do is, if you're washing the dishes or, doing laundry or you're driving, just sit in silence. Don't have the radio on. Don't have a podcast on. Don't listen to music in that time. I mean, I love music. I listen to music all the time, but, well, not all the time. That's the point. You need that time of silence as well. And one thing I've realized is that when I give myself enough silence and then I try to do creative work, I'm ready to go. I just flow right into it and everything falls into place and I can focus and I get stuff done and I know what I need to do. But if I don't give myself enough of that silent time, like say I'm just listening to the news or listening to podcasts all the time, I notice that I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like lost. There's like this sense of clutter, and I don't know where to go and what the next step is. And if you just turn everything off for a second, the dust will settle, the chaos goes away, and you just start to kind of relax, and then things make sense. So that's what I've been doing, and it helps a lot with my artwork, and I've been feeling really creative with my artwork lately. So I've been working on a series of paintings for a while now that I call the Prismatic Textiles. And this is sort of a look into the human mind and, in a way, society. Prismatic textile, what does that mean? It's meant to be a play on, like, the threads or the web of society that connects us all together. And there's all these different windows into experience from that. It's really sort of a dialogue with the painting. I start with this plan and this geometric structure and a vague idea of what the painting is going to be. And then slowly I start to fill in the painting, and put this energy in place and build it into something that tells a story. All right, so here is one of the new pieces that I'm working on. This is from the Prismatic Textile series. This one is going to be something like number 9 in the series. But all these have some similar stuff going on. And one of the big things is, it's not done yet. This is just all laid out, but what I call these channels or grooves. Spaces here that are like carved out of the main piece. And I like to call them grooves or channels because what they do is they break up the picture plane. Everything is so dense in these paintings. I feel like it's allowing energy to move around the painting. Here's Prismatic Textile number 2, subtitled The Language Sandbox. It's a large painting that I completed in 2019. You can see a similar geometric structure and partitioning of the picture plane with those groove channels. Here the grooves are a bit more subtle and overlaid by other objects. This piece brings in machine-like components, gears, flywheels, and belt systems, inspired by antique mechanized looms. There's also a dense web of architecture and symbolic elements. Tiny abstract web-like structures fill in the background, creating the impression of a woven piece of fabric, the fabric of society. The piece is reflecting on the mechanistic and evolutionary qualities of language. It's a Tower of Babel-esque scene, which also explores language as both a fabric and the machine that weaves the fabric. This also ties into the name of the painting series, the Prismatic Textiles. In this way, language is conceived as a self-replicating system which seems to grow and evolve organically in ways both dependent and independent of biological systems. When you really think about it, it's amazing. Our ability to communicate with different forms of language is a way of extending our own minds beyond the physical limitations of our bodies. Language is like an invisible fabric, made out of countless threads of information, woven together in a collective story. This fabric of society connects different points in time and individuals. When information can flow back and forth between two or more points, it transforms individuals into synchronized groups. So that's it for today. I'll give you some more updates. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're interested in this, and I'll see you in the next video.